This is the third in our series on law and government.
Posse Comitatus, what it is, and how it affects us today. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're tackling a law that doesn't get talked about much outside of political or military circles, but it actually has a huge impact on the balance between freedom and security in the United States. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act. So let's start at the beginning. The law was passed in 1878, right after the Reconstruction era following the Civil War. During Reconstruction, federal troops were stationed in the South to enforce newly passed civil rights laws and to protect formerly enslaved people. But once Reconstruction ended, Southern politicians demanded that the federal government pull the Army out of everyday law enforcement. The result was the Posse Comitatus Act. Now, what does the act say? In simple terms, it prohibits the U.S. Army, and later, by extension, the Air Force, from acting as domestic law enforcement within the borders of the United States. The Navy and Marines were later included through Department of Defense policy, even though they aren't technically named in the law. The key idea is that civil policing should be done by civilian agencies, like the local police or the FBI, not by soldiers with military training and weapons. Here's why that matters. Think about what it would mean if the president, or even a governor, could just send federal troops to police a protest, raid neighborhoods, or enforce everyday laws. That blurs the line between a democracy and a militarized state. The founders of the country, and later lawmakers, knew that giving the military unchecked power at home is one of the fastest ways to erode civil liberties. But it's not totally absolute. There are exceptions. For example, the National Guard, when under a governor's control, can be called up to restore order after natural disasters or riots. And under something called the Insurrection Act, presidents can deploy regular military forces domestically if there's a rebellion, violent unrest that local authorities can't handle, or threats to federal law. This act has been invoked a handful of times in U.S. history, like during the Civil Rights Movement when federal troops were sent to enforce desegregation. So how does this affect our lives today? Well, whenever there's a crisis, whether it's immigration at the southern border, hurricanes and natural disasters, or protests that sometimes turn violent, the question pops up: should the military get involved? Politicians argue about it. Some say the restrictions make the government too weak in moments of national emergency. Others warn that loosening the rules could normalize the idea of soldiers policing civilians, which erodes democratic safeguards. Here's an example. In recent years, debates over using the military for domestic issues, like border enforcement or during national protests, brought up the Posse Comitatus Act again. Each time, people ask, do we really want the military stepping into roles usually handled by police? So the act may sound old and technical, but it's directly tied to how free societies protect themselves from government overreach. For most Americans, the comfort that there's a legal wall between civilian life and military power is a safeguard against living in a police state. In short, the Posse Comitatus Act is a reminder that some lines of power aren't meant to be crossed. It's not perfect, and it has its loopholes, but it's part of the constitutional guardrails that keep the military from becoming a tool of domestic politics. So next time you hear the phrase, you'll know it's about much more than old legal language. It's about democracy, liberty, and the ongoing debate over how far our government should be able to go in the name of security. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy learning about how history shapes our lives today, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives like this.